Hello. This is going to be our introduction note-taking experience just to get some context and background knowledge for what the age of exploration was and what the factors were that started to cause this time period in history. The objective for today is after completing these notes, I will have a foundational understanding of what the age of exploration was and what caused this time period in history. I will be able to apply this foundational understanding of the context of the age of exploration to document analysis later in the week. So I just want to let you know that that's the purpose of this note-taking, is to really get a foundational understanding so that we can apply this understanding to some documents we're going to be analyzing Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. So general historical context, so you should be taking these notes next to the general historical context slide on your note-taking sheet. So it was a time period in history which lasted from 1418 to 1620, generally. Very similar to the Renaissance and Reformation time period in Europe. It was characterized by various European nations making voyages all over the world. There were a lot of reasons why these voyages happened. And they led to both positive and negative consequences for the world, both in history and today. We're actually going to be, when we analyze the documents in the second half of the week, we're really going to be trying to understand, was this a positive historical phenomenon, or was this a negative historical phenomenon? And how have historians portrayed this phenomenon in history? So, causes. There were different motivations for different explorers. One big one were nations and explorers wanted to find new ways to get from Europe to Asia in order to increase trade. They were very interested in Asian spices, and they wanted to find new trade routes to avoid Italy and Islam. Italy and Islam controlled a lot of the trade in this area. And if you had goods from India, they would have to go through this area to get to Europe, and that made things very expensive. So Europe wanted to find new ways to get to India without having to go through Italy and Islam. So they tried going around Africa. They tried going west of Europe, leaning to different results. Explorers also wanted to earn fame and wealth. And finally, explorers wanted to spread Christianity. So another cause was advances in knowledge and technology. So there were a lot of technological advances that occurred during the Renaissance and this time of new learning. One of these things was cartography, which is the art and science of map making. They were able to create more accurate maps, which made exploring and keeping track of explorations much easier. You can see this picture kind of shows a very early map of the world, which is very inaccurate, right? So this new science of cartography that was discovered with the rebirth of classical texts really allowed them to create more accurate maps of the world. There was also improvements in shipbuilding. They created a new ship called a caravel, which you can see in this picture over here. They were small, fast, and easy to maneuver, which really led to an increase in exploration and ship travel. There were also improvements in compasses and an improvement in weapons. Improvements in weapons gave Europeans an advantage over the people they encountered during their explorations. The beginning of the exploration period was really started by Portugal, and the monarchs of Portugal really supported funding, they really supported an increase in technological advances in both cartography, shipbuilding, navigation, all these things. Vasco da Gama was one of the first Portuguese explorers to set out. He traveled all around the west coast. You can see him down here. You can see his trade route over here. He traveled all the way down the west coast of Africa, around the southern tip of Africa, and eventually led to Asia and India, where he was able to trade for spices and such. The effects of this early Portuguese exploration was an increase in Europe's knowledge of the world, It brought gold and enslaved people back from Africa. So this is really the beginning of this African slave trade that we will definitely talk more about as we go further in this unit. He was also brought back spices, porcelain, incense, jewels, and silk from Asia, and he set up Portuguese ports and colonies in India. He began attacking Muslim cities on the eastern coast of Africa, which effectively ended the period of Islamic trade dominance. You can see an image of him entering India and arriving on the coast, and then an image of him attacking some African cities on the eastern coast of Africa. So Spain was also an early explorer nation. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, the same monarchs who were responsible for the Inquisition in Spain and Europe, fostered exploration. They sponsored Christopher Columbus's voyage. He was hoping to find a new trade route to Africa, and so he went, you can see he went west of Europe, and he thought, when he landed here, he thought he landed in India. That's why he began calling the people he encountered Indians. However, as we clearly see today, he did not make it to India. He got diverted by the large American continents. Ferdinand Magellan, which we can see here, discovered the Strait of Magellan, which is this canal which goes through the southern tip of South America that allows people to travel through South America, and they can travel all around the world to Asia and India, where they were hoping to go. So the impact of this early Spanish exploration, it obviously revealed the existence of the Americas to Europe, although many other people already knew of the existence of the Americas, such as all the many people who lived in the Americas at the time. Magellan discovered that you could sail all the way around the world through the Strait of Magellan, and it marked the beginning of Spanish and Portuguese taking over the land in the Americas and effectively destroying the native populations in the process. We're going to be discussing this a lot more in the second half of this week. Later exploration, so this was really the beginning of the time when explorers such as Hernan Cortez, who we talked about when we studied the Aztecs, and Francisco Pizarro, who we didn't talk about, began conquering empires such as the Aztec and the Inca. European nations gained large amounts of wealth, land, and natural resources in the process by stealing it from these native people who already lived in the area. Crops and animals were also traded between the two parties. For example, corn was transported to Europe when it had never been there before, as well as various types of beans. The English, French, and Dutch also began exploring Canada and North America. This would eventually lead to the development of the 13 colonies in America. This is the end of the slideshow. So if you had finished this today, great. If this is Tuesday and you're finishing it, that's also fine. You should go on and watch the movie next.